We live in a world of ubiquitous data. A world where the availability of information has reached the point where the question for people like you and me is no longer where to find what data, but how to present data. That's when data visualization comes in, converting this to this. According to Vitaly Friedman, editor-in-chief of Smashing Magazine, an online magazine dedicated to designers and developers, the main goal of data visualization is its ability to visualize data, communicating information clearly and effectively. The key point here is that DataViz, as I will call it, graphically contains information which has been abstracted in some schematic form. This works well because, according to Fernanda Viegas, a visualization researcher,
basically half of our brain is hardwired for vision. Vision is the biggest bandwidth that we have in terms of sensory information to the outside world. So what visualization is doing is that it's just taking advantage of the fact that we are so programmed to understand the world around us in terms of what we see.
But the concept has been around for a long time. Here's a piece dating back from 1869, documenting French losses during the Napoleonic campaigns in Russia. Here, the width of the red line shows how many soldiers Napoleon brought to Moscow, and the black shows just how few made it back. There's more to it than that, yet it remains a very clean and effective piece. Still, in today's digital age, DataViz is of renewed pertinence. Technology is at the core of this new DataViz. It allows us to easily and quickly collect, access, and share information. It gives us the computing power to reinterpret this information in complex ways. And then it allows us to present it in new kinds of media, from slideshows to interactive web pages to holograms. The possibilities are endless. But what if this new technologically advanced DataViz is just hype and special effects, as some would interpret the scene I displayed for you from Iron Man 2? In the next few minutes, we'll explore some examples of DataViz as rendered possible by new technologies, and try to separate the useful from the hype. Here's a more modern approach to the same issue of war losses. This piece is integrated into an article about the human cost of war in Afghanistan, and its slideshow format means that the reader isn't overloaded with too much information at once. It's an effective way of putting things into perspective. But one thing that separates today from the Napoleonic era is our access to more and more data. So let's look at what happens when you try to put more information in the same piece. Here's an example that some friends and I found particularly compelling. First, for some background. There's an annual amateur singing competition in Europe called Eurovision, where each country sends one group to perform. Then, at the end of the show, citizens vote by text messaging. Of course, ever unhappy with the results, we then accuse each other of political biasing. So Swedish journalist Thomas Molen created this interactive graphic that allows the user to verify for herself the veracity of such a claim. In short, these lines indicate how many points were voted from one country to another. This, for example, shows all the countries that voted for Russia. Compared to our prior examples, there is initially a lot more information on the page, rendering it somewhat confusing. However, because of the interactive nature of the piece, the user can filter her way to understanding. Also, she is free to explore the data in any order and to draw her own conclusions.
It was very interesting to see the different countries and how they voted, especially looking at Western Europe versus Eastern Europe. What's great about it, I think, is that you can focus on certain countries themselves. I'm maybe more interested in some countries more than others just because of my own European heritage.
Having it stand out from normal data representations might get them to maybe absorb it a bit better. But that being said, if everybody just starts making these pretty things and starts investing too much time in making it really pretty or whatever, it might lose some effectiveness. I could see that.
This idea of placing the look of a piece before its content is something that designers worry about. Here's an example which many consider one of the most beautiful abstractions of bulk data to ever have been made. A stream graph schematizing box office ticket sales for 1 year. But listen to the thoughts of Alberto Cairo, Editora Globo's director for infographics.
And it's really attractive, it's really beautiful. It's graphically just gorgeous. And started trying to read it, and I couldn't understand anything. At the first level, engaging the reader with a nice looking graphic form, it works. It works perfectly, it really grabs your eye and makes you stop and try to decode it. But after that, it frustrates you.
This brings to mind a potential disconnect between designer and reader. While the reader usually just wants to comprehend the information available and any story behind it, the designer wants to share information with his audience, but still needs to capture the audience's attention before this can take place. Depending on the designer, priorities here may change. So let's move to a domain which has information transfer and processing as a sole, indisputable goal. That of data tools. These softwares or services afford users an augmented interaction with their data, better informing decisions to be made. What you are seeing now is a showcase of a product called Palantir Government being applied to counterinsurgency efforts. Although the goal of visualizing data clearly and graphically is still applicable, there are some major differences between these and our past journalistic examples. I think the most obvious is the degree of interactivity required from the user. Although we saw examples of interactive journalistic graphics, this takes the concept to a whole new level. Let's recap what we've seen so far. We started with examples of data viz which show a limited amount of data in a new way. These were effective. Then, we looked at examples which condense more data into a single piece. Here, only the graphics which allowed the user to filter what he was seeing remained clear. The more data in the piece, the more interactivity was required for clarity. It seems that while technology has allowed interactive or sequenced data viz to evolve into a media which can display large amounts of information, any instantaneous image in data viz is still subject to the same rules as in the 1800s. After all, the end user is still you. I hope that I have given you a glimpse into the beauty and utility of the new data visualization of today's digital age. So I urge you to explore the world of data viz yourselves. It's simple, just keep your eyes open and your mind clear. If you think about it, you'll run into it everywhere you look.